He works with wealth managers and insurance, and where he sees the market going in those industries. Now, again, previously he was with Thomson Reuters, a very well-known company, and with Citibank as well. So he has that hardcore banking experience, guys, which is so valuable for you guys as you start interacting with banks, as you start interacting with regulators. You need to understand what they're thinking, of course. So, guys, thank you so much for being with me. I want to start by giving you each a 30-second intro, like anything I missed or anything you want to say. Hello, go ahead. Let's start with Roberto, and then we'll move to Ali. Go ahead, guys.
No, okay, Karim, I think you said it all. First of all, thank you for having us today. It's an honor, it's a pleasure. I think you said it all. I mean, my career has been in tech. I started in consulting. It was a stressful life, and I decided to leave for an even more stressful life, joining a startup. It was early 2000, so it was an e-commerce. E-commerce was booming, so, but it was intense, really intense, and great learning, right? So I really loved it. Then Google came in, so I spent a long time there. It was fun. Time flies really when you measure it by quarters and everything is growing. So it was really a really great experience. So I became your neighbor because I ended up studying in Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I moved here in Dubai to manage emerging markets. So I've been traveling like crazy across this region. So I love it. And as my wife decided to stay here, so I decided at some point to jump on this new role, which is awesome. Is about as you said, developing the startup ecosystem, contributing to that, and working with startups to in their journey to growth. So looking forward to the conversation, to meet you all, guys, and then learning from you as well what you're up to, and having a great conversation with Ali and you, Karim.
Great, Roberto. Thank you so much. Ali, tell us a little bit about how you kind of arrived where you are today, and a bit about your journey.
Thanks so much, Karim, and thanks everyone for having me. So my journey's pretty much been on the banking side. I started off at a bank and then moved on to a banking services provider as Thomson Reuters, as you mentioned. I think the key, especially when it comes to fintechs or working with banks, is understanding the regulation, right? Banks are incredibly risk averse. Banks are incredibly fearful of moving vast measures of data estate onto unknown platforms, which to be honest is what fintechs are. But banks are realizing very quickly that this is the area that they need to play in. And in fact, it's amazing because I just got off a call with a customer prior to joining this one, where they were talking about how they can integrate into the ecosystem. How can they use fintechs to be a part of people's everyday lives, right? And the focus was exactly that. They didn't want to hear about large core banking platforms. They didn't want to hear about expensive risks platforms. They wanted to know small, nimble organizations that they can plug and play with very quickly, and that they can experiment with very quickly, and that they can grow with very quickly. And I think that's basically the direction where things are heading. Big banks in the UAE and in the region as well as the world are looking into that direction. Investment is flowing into that direction, and I think this is our opportunity as tech providers and as fintechs to come together and really deliver a differentiated experience, not for the banks, but the customers of those banks.
So Ali, follow-up question quickly to what you're saying. I mean, is it safe to say that banks, these big organizations, right, that have been often operating for a long time, and they're like these big ships, right? So turning direction for them or doing something new is hard, and it takes time and it's difficult. But are they kind of leveraging the startup ecosystem almost for innovation, right? Are they seeking innovation through the startup ecosystem? Maybe they're going to partner with some of these startups, and maybe instead of kind of trying to do something internally, they can leverage these external organizations that are nimble, like you said, smaller, and are able to take risks and sort of, create new things that the bank wouldn't be able to test or create on their own.
I mean, I would take it one step further, Karim. So what most of the banks are trying to do is create digital versions of themselves. So if you look at, for example, Emirates NBD here in the UAE, Commercial Bank of Dubai in the UAE, First Abu Dhabi Bank in the UAE. I can name lists and lists of banks in Saudi, in Jordan, in Kuwait, in Qatar, that are all looking to do the same thing. And what they're effectively trying to do is say, how can I partner with fintechs to create a digital version of myself? And eventually, and ideally, move my existing customer base to that digital version base, which means they want to cannibalize their own customer base. Because for most banks, if you think about it, targeting a retail customer is not very profitable. A bank does not want to spend hours and hours of a relationship manager's time handling Ali or Karim or Roberto or anyone. They want to have a quick experience that they can provide to this customer that the customer can be happy with. And then right off the bat from there, they want to just move on and be able to serve the next customer. And so to answer your question, Karim, yes, banks are exactly looking to do that. And what they're struggling to do is find that combination of fintechs to pull together in order to execute that vision because they're so risk averse.
That's really interesting. And so, Roberto, coming back to you, what's the role of technology in your view when it comes to the MENA region's development, when it comes to kind of taking these banks? I mean, obviously they want to go digital, tech is at the center of that, but what's the role specifically in MENA, and sort of what is Microsoft doing there, and why does Microsoft have such a thing as Microsoft for Startups, right? I mean, Microsoft is a massive company. They don't need startups, or do they?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. So there are two parts in it, I see. One is on the role of technology, and the second one, what Microsoft is set to do here in the region, right? So on the role of technology, I think technology is a means to an end at the end of the day, right? So I've been working in tech companies for a long time, and it's almost never about tech or technology itself. Is about people and what is around the human side of things, right? So, but technology, it can have a crucial role, in enabling these solutions to happen, in enabling this innovation to come through. As Satya is saying, we are in an industry that does not respect tradition but respect only innovation, right? So what Ali was mentioning, it's all about the user experience. It's about how tech can support in further understanding the user behavior, further understanding the user needs, and then scale at the right time. And that's important. So technology comes, it's very important when we work with startups that are focusing on solving real problems, because when they really solve, when they really get the product market fit, then of course then it comes the value of technology is a multiplier, because it can really sustain that scale, both from a product perspective and then also from a reach perspective. So that's very important. So the role of technology is key, and what Microsoft does in that aspect is there are a lot of initiatives when it comes to skilling. So enabling the community, starting early on from students to people that are already working in organizations and startups, of course, to understand technology, get the right knowledge transfer and experience needed to build on the technology. So the role of technology is key. Also is key when we think about, broadly speaking, in this vertical, in this industry, if you think about financial literacy, financial inclusion, and building for everyone. That's where technology can really comes, as an enabler to achieve these goals at scale across our region. Why Microsoft is in it with startups? So why Microsoft is investing in startups is because Microsoft is a very large organization, and Microsoft works with many customers globally, right? So the thing is, having this relationship with customers, Microsoft is in a unique place to understand in the overall digital transformation buzzword we hear every now and then, is understand what are the real use cases, the real challenges that customers are facing. And you hear the struggle of both from an organization perspective, but also execution perspective, where companies usually get stuck in terms of the agility that they would require in order to implement solutions that would really keep the pace with the evolving needs of customers. Customers are more impatient today, are more curious, are more demanding. So as Ali was saying, the traditional financial services institutions don't follow that pace, right? Even if they understand it, but they don't follow that pace. So why we're in it is because we think about the ecosystem. So if we are able to bring innovation to corporates in a meaningful way, and at the same time accelerate the sales and growth of startups, by doing both at the same time, it's kind of more an ecosystem play, but there is value for the whole ecosystem. You mentioned before this co-selling, so selling together with Microsoft. It's a journey, so it's not something that it starts day one, but it's a journey that we take startups through. but there is value in it because globally we surpassed $1 billion in revenues from the deals that come from startups to corporates. So and this number is growing. So there is a lot of value there in meaningfully connecting startups with corporates, and bringing fresh innovation and a different way, for Microsoft to help corporates in their innovation journey, but also sustaining startups in their growth, which is critical for them then to secure, funding, increase valuation, look into profitability, and also having social impact. As we said, for us, it's important to embed that component when we tackle into the ecosystem, because it's not just about growth at any cost. It's about growth with profitability, but also having an impact, so building for everyone. And so that's why we are trying to address also solutions that take that into account.
So that's really interesting. So guys, I mean, what I'm hearing here is an opportunity, obviously, for startups, a once in a lifetime opportunity probably, to kind of plug into Microsoft's network, whether it's distribution or customers or otherwise, and technology as well, where we can actually, if there's something that overlaps, right, then it becomes very interesting for everybody, and it's a win-win-win, like they say. All right, Ali, what are the specific areas that you're seeing? Specific areas, Roberto was mentioning these areas of potential cross-selling, or these areas where Microsoft and their clients and startups kind of overlap. What are some of the sweet spots that you're seeing? We have SaaS platforms here, we have payment processors here, we have cash enablers here, so like better access to cash. What are some of the specific areas, Ali, you're seeing?
So I think when you talk to customers across the board, 4 large level problems sort of emerge, right? So the first is what you would bucket as optimization of processes, right? And that is basically painful processes that banks do at the back end, that they've been doing traditionally, paper-based, slow, bureaucratic, and what can be done to optimize these processes. See, the challenge is when most speakers go and talk to bank boards, they talk about this concept of 10x growth, right? But banks reverse engineer it. To banks, because they're risk averse, if I have a process that takes 5 days and I can complete it in 5 minutes, that's 10x growth. That's what banks think in terms of 10x growth. So if you have a payments platform that can expedite payments, if you can prevent customer churn, if you can provide a better customer experience, if you can use robotic process automation to optimize processes, if you can use AI and machine learning to better segment customers to provide better marketing campaigns, or if you can even do basic fraud analytics or claims processing, these are all arenas as examples where banks will see massive benefits, because here in the region, these processes take a lot of time. That time means money for the bank, cost for the bank, and slower service for the customer, right? This is the first area. The second area is, how can we embed as a bank into the overall sort of customer journey? How can we, it's a concept known as open banking. I'm sure you've all heard of it, right? So it's all about how can a bank be part of the customer's user journey? Can a bank basically, because I'll give you an example. Today, when you go to a bank, you don't think about buying a house, you think about getting a loan. Well, the bank doesn't want you to get a loan. The bank wants you to buy a house, because if you buy a house, you're going to get a loan, right? So how can banks integrate with property portals? How can banks integrate with and then allow you to basically find your house on the bank's website, mortgage your house on the bank's website, understand your credit score on the bank's website, buy the house on your bank's website, and go ahead and actually finish the transaction all on the bank's website? So this is an example where you can replace that with homes, you can replace it with cars, you can replace it with anything. And then you can even take it into micro lending, which is another arena that banks are very interested in, because banks are realizing that the largest segments of populations are not in most of our countries, which are emerging economies.
Yeah, this is true in the Middle East in particular, of course.
100%. And most of these individuals, they are not individuals that will ever take a $300,000-$400,000 loan. These guys are people that will want $10,000, $5,000 in terms of loan. And a bank, to a bank, calculating the risk for Roberto to give me back $400,000, or me calculating the risk for Karim to give back $5,000, is the exact same process, right? The process is exactly the same. So if a bank can find ways to optimize that process and quickly be able to churn out micro loans to a large segment of people, not only do they reduce the overall risk on their balance sheet, because the probability that Ali and 500 other people like Ali can pay back $5,000 is much greater than one SME who may not be able to pay back $500,000. So That's another arena. And then the last arena, of course, is they're really looking to expand what they call the boundaries of regulation, right? Because today, most banks are regulated by the central bank. The central bank effectively has three major challenges. They need to ensure that there's enough stimulus and cash within the economy. They need to ensure that there is a large SME growth sector, because SMEs generally make up 70% of the overall GDP of any economy. And they need to ensure that the customer satisfactions across the banks are viable, such that if there is a run on the banks, there is enough liquidity in the system to be able to pay off those debts. In order to manage these three things, central banks tell banks very clearly that you need to work with providers that can automate these processes, right? And here's the interesting part. Traditionally, when you thought of something as fundamental as core banking, you think of core banking providers. You would probably think of your big fish. You would think of Oracle. You would think of Finastra. You would think of Temenos. And these are all great companies. But the truth is most banks are not really that interested to hear from these big juggernauts, because these big juggernauts have now packaged very large systems that are not applicable to most banks. Most banks are now interested in talking to Mambu, Thought Machine, and the likes of those providers, which are much more nimble, which give them a basic requirement and then allow them to grow as the overall journey grows. And that's the overarching direction.
So there's an opportunity, guys, here. What I'm hearing from Ali, of course, is taking whatever you've created and giving banks access to it, right? Whether it's software as a service or otherwise. Many of you are thinking of going direct to consumer right now, okay? And many of you are thinking you need to do that. But maybe, it's worth considering, hey, banks as an intermediary to help me reach my consumers, because fundamentally, a lot of you are creating innovations that the banks would love to have. As a matter of fact, some of you are competing with existing bank products, mazboot. And so, hey, wait a minute, what if I actually went to the bank as well? What if the bank could be a conduit? Because apparently, according to Ali and Roberto, the banks are looking for people like you to bring them these innovations. And maybe they license them. Maybe they use them. Maybe you use them as a go-to market. They give you access to their customer base, and they gain access to your technology. So again, I'm not saying this is the only way you should go, but certainly something to think about, right? What do you think, Roberto? Does that make sense?
I'd like to give an example actually of that one, because if you take a look at, for example, Paytm, right, or M-Pesa, or all of those fintech providers, which are very well prevalent in Africa, all of them are an extension of Alipay. What Alipay has done is they've just white labeled their solution and provided it to other markets. And that's a very viable strategy that most fintechs can and should take, because banks want white labeled solutions. First Abu Dhabi Bank wants to say, hey, this is my great platform that's on my website and marketed with my branding. But in reality, it's a fintech's platform, and you're just taking a portion of the revenue that comes in. It's a win-win for everybody. So completely agree with what you're saying there, great.
And this is not just, guys, this is not just for those of you who are doing, things that compete directly with banks. This is a concept. Even people like Ship Cash, right? You have nothing to do with banks per se. You're a fintech company, Ship Cash, but the idea of using your software and licensing it and giving other people access to it, as opposed to going through one partner or going direct to consumer, something for everybody to think about. Okay, now here's
agree with that, Karim. Yeah, just one quick comment on that is there is this dimension, which is we were having this meeting with the CEO of a bank here in the UAE, and what he was mentioning was really interesting, because he said at the board level, they get this in the banks, because we always refers to startups as like we use the image of a unicorn, right? Even if get to unicorn, as agile and the corporates like or elephants or those. But it was interesting, because it was saying that at the board level, they totally get it, and they really want to work more with startups, as you both were saying, those nimble startups that can solve for specific use cases. And it's not all the time about breakthrough innovation. It's also this incremental innovation that is really useful for the banks and the institutions to connect more with the customers. But he was saying the real limitation, the real challenge was that at the management level, the management were not able to translate the inputs that from the board to the ground in order to change this as fast as people would expect, right? Because you have startups that are agile and they cannot waste time and come with the solutions, so they're eager to, right? So it's technology, but it's also, as we said before, there is a component of culture and organization that is also one of the barriers in this process.
Yeah, that's a great point, Roberto. And guys, thinking about you're all pitching right now to corporates, to bigger corporates, to banks, to regulators, right? Putting yourself in their shoes, understanding maybe the give-get very carefully, right? Not just going out there with whatever you've already developed as is and presenting it that way, assuming that they're going to all automatically do the work for you and tell you, well, oh, okay, this is how I could use your technology. No, you tell them how the different options or the different ways that they can use your technology, right? Pitch, from the perspective of the bank or from the perspective of the manager at the bank. The board might understand something, the manager might not, and he might feel competition with you. So you have to go in there and open the door and say, no, this is how we can collaborate, actually. This is how this technology in your hands can make that 5x saving. We're not going to say 10x growth, Ali. We're going to say, this is how we can make your processes 5 times easier, 5 times faster, right? These perspectives, right? Understanding who you're selling to, and the needs of who you're selling to, Ali knows this because that's what he does, is very, very important, right? Positioning things in the right way. Okay, big question, Ali and Roberto, for both of you. We're in the MENA region. One of the biggest challenges most of the MENA region has, and maybe that's not the case in Dubai, I don't know, but certainly where we're operating, North Africa, Levant, right? We have technology gaps. We have resource gaps. We don't know where to find good people. We're trying to build high-tech companies, and we can't even find tech co-founders. I can't tell you how many companies I've worked with across the region, and including the ones you're seeing today with us here, that are struggling to find tech co-founders and struggling to access technology. What can we do? What's your advice? What's Microsoft doing, if anything?
Yeah, look, from my perspective, there are many things to be done, right? So first of all, we always, it's not that sometimes the whole topic about lack of talent is misinterpreted or not really well spoken, because it's not that there is no talent in this region, is that there is not enough, right? So this is one thing. Then look, on one hand, you have the example of Karim. What Karim did in the early days was they really want to build something meaningful for the region. And what they did is they really went to the US and UK and they pitched. They really pitched to people from this region that had a significant experience abroad to come back, right? So, but you cannot do that at scale, of course. But by doing that, they took people back from this region that understand the culture of this region, but with significant experience to build a great product, right? And to build it fast and to scale and so on and so forth. Now, more needs to be done, and this is the role, I would say, where players like Microsoft can have in the ecosystem in order to enable people, enable the next generation of young people in the region to be part of this, right? So to have the skills and the knowledge to tap into this ecosystem, to tap into being more entrepreneurial, to tap being working in a startup in a way that they are empowered to do that. So on my side, on the startup side, what we are set to do is in one of the initiatives that we are going to launch in the coming months is targeting youth. And targeting youth when it comes to entrepreneurship, both on the entrepreneurship as a mindset kind of thing, but also the technology. So how to build a tech startup and what is that you need to have in mind, right? And we are making also the student ambassador program as part of this initiative. But that's for us is a funnel. So touching the youth on this and exposing them to these skills is an enabler. We see that as a funnel, because from there, what we want to do is to channel, the ones that will be more entrepreneurial, if you want, and share their ideas, and from there, from idea, go to the incubation, acceleration, and so on and so forth. So go through the funnel, right? But the skilling part, we see it more as an enabler across the whole ecosystem, because even if you don't end up being a founder or an entrepreneur, and you end up working in a corporate, still corporates need, youth coming with that mindset to challenge the status quo, to come with ideas, with knowledge, skills. We invited in December Yuri Levin. Is one of the co-founders of Wait. He was here in the region to share his story, and it was very inspiring because he got many questions. The same question you asked me, he basically answered, guys, you need to have more engineers. guys, you need to invest from early on, from education, right, from university, from school education, to have more engineers. But his message was also, you need to have people that focus on real problems and start early on, and have those skills where people would know how to leverage technology for what, right? So on our side, we have many initiatives in terms of skilling. On the startup side, I told you we are launching an initiative to tap into youth. On a broader Microsoft scale, there are many skilling initiatives. We launched last year in February the Reactor, which is now a virtual sort of community where we provide for free a number of skilling courses, trainings, workshops. So it's very rich in terms of content. And we are committed, right, to help on that angle. So it's looking at it as an ecosystem. It's looking at it strategically and longer term, that it should start early on. And it's not just pure tech, it's also a cultural aspect of the mindset, because part of the region is risk averse, right? In terms of culture, even the parents that not encourage their children, to be more entrepreneurial. I mean, it's still a bit conservative on that angle. So most of the most successful entrepreneurs are not first-time entrepreneurs. So I think we need to build an environment here in the region where people can get on it, try, fail fast, and iterate, right? It's easy to say, but a number of components that need to be aligned in the ecosystem in order to make that happen.
So that's really great to hear that you guys are thinking about the whole value chain. You've told us a little bit about what you're doing for, like, on the educational and upskilling side. What about, I've heard rumors about, an accelerator, something else happening. Tell us more about that, and when should we expect that? What's it going to look like? What kind of companies are you going to be looking for? What will you be offering?
Yep. Look, the rumor is right. You heard it. You heard it right. So we developed a model where we are part of a global team, and the global strategy, as most of the time happens in big corporation, is of course set to build something that can scale globally, right? But we believe that our ecosystem is earlier stage. So what we wanted to do is to develop something that makes sense for this region and have a real impact on this region. So on one hand, we still have our global program, which is geared towards later stage startups that meet some criteria. So if you meet the criteria, you're revenue generating, you're backed by institutional funding and a few others, then you can get into the program and you can tap into those resources. But the reality is the vast majority of this region is not at that stage yet, especially when it comes to enterprise solutions, whether B2B, purely B2B SaaS, or enterprise startups, right, that sell to enterprises. So what we are announcing, what we already announced with the partnership with Abu Dhabi Investment Office, which is a regional partnership, is we are going to launch a few very focused programs for the region. One of them is an accelerator. It's a virtual accelerator that is very much geared towards enterprise startups and corporate engagement, where this is the sweet spot we have in terms of the expertise and the resources and the assets we can extend from Microsoft, the broader Microsoft, to the startup ecosystem. So we will have 2 cohorts per year, 15 startups in each cohort, as the founding cohort. But the model for us is going to be scalable, because we will have also expansion partners with whom we can probably fund additional cohorts on top. And we have ideas on how then with time to become also a bit more industry focused across the region. So this in terms of timelines, so we will have a series of engagements with ecosystem and events starting mid-May. And the aim of those events will be to bring together public and private sector around the challenges of the ecosystem and surfacing insights or call to actions, but at the same time have a competition to select the startups. And then the accelerator should start, say, by mid-August, the first cohort, and then we will have 2 cohorts per year moving forward. So for us, it's important. It's a component of a longer-term strategy where we tackled. We mentioned before there will be something addressing youth, something addressing startups that are earlier stage, and what we will be able to take into the global program. And in between, we will have other programs to bridge the gaps for startups that are at aviation stage and needs to move to MVP, and for startups that are really later on in the journey and they really need to scale globally and beyond the borders of our region. So it's a long-term play and it's an ecosystem play. And we are happy to announce this and disclose this. We had this partnership announced recently, two weeks ago. So we are looking forward to the journey and looking forward to iterate during the process and learn from the startups. To make the programs really impactful for the ecosystem.
So that's really great news, because that's a model, right? This model of using innovation, acceleration, incubation, scaling as almost innovation, as one way for companies to innovate. Okay, this is a common model in Europe and the United States, at least much more common. It's much more rare here in the MENA region. So I'm personally very happy and excited to hear that Microsoft is kind of bringing that way of interacting, that relationship between customers, partners, startups, and established companies to kind of build innovation, create new products and services, and help everybody kind of win together. Again, first time, I mean, rarely have I seen this happening in MENA. It's quite common in Boston and some of the other areas. You see accelerators focused on corporate innovation over there. Here, it's rare. So that's great news. Another question, Roberto, for you, and I don't know if Ali's still with us. I don't see him, but I'm going to ask you, Roberto, and if Ali wants to answer as well. I mean, what kind of advice can you offer some of these entrepreneurs most of them are fintech companies, they're tech-enabled companies, they're often developing new tech, right? They're interacting with the regulators, and they have a lot of questions that they need to answer. I mean, what kind of relationship can they hope for with Microsoft, even if it's not funding? I'm not talking about funding right now. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about maybe informal. What about advice? How can they reach out, right? And not just Microsoft. I'm talking about Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all the tech leaders. What would you tell these entrepreneurs to be doing to kind of learn as much as possible?
Yeah, well, awesome question. I mean, and it's a conversation. So I would love also to hear from the founders here about what they think about this. But from my perspective, definitely there are a few things. One is definitely focusing on real problems is key. It's easy to say, but we still see a number of startups that are scratching the surface or focusing on symptoms rather than real problems.
So solving real problems, addressing real market challenges or gaps.
Yes, and in that we can play a role, meaning that given that the broader Microsoft is working with many corporates, for example, we can play a role for some of the insights or some of the use cases and challenges that corporates have, and this will be part of the program that I was mentioning as well. So we are making it part of the program. So this is one thing. Then I would say you mentioned it all. Sometimes most of the founders in the region, of course, have to spend most of the time in fundraising, right? So, and it's understandable, but at the same time, we see that they start thinking about the team and the product later than what it should be. And if you see still the percentage of failures in a VC portfolio in average is highly due to people-related issues. So focusing on building the right team and the product there should be more focus, right? So even in the news, in the whole ecosystem, not just from the founder's perspective, we spend most time celebrating startups that raise funds, right? Which is like you go to a bank and have a loan, right? And it's the example that was done before is sensitive because I'm purchasing an apartment, so I am in the process of the mortgage right now, and it's awful. So but you see me smiling because I didn't do the down payment yet, so it's okay. Yeah. No, yeah, it's expensive. So I'm saying really, I would say carving out the necessary time for product and team other than just fundraising, and as an ecosystem also give visibility to the stories about how to build the product and what founders are doing to build the product here, and bring in here expertise also from other ecosystems around that and how to build the team, right? And we touched base a bit before about the talent issue and how to tackle the talent in the region. So these are top of mind. I mean, is focusing on real problems, is about focusing also on the team and the product, and the mindset as well. The mindset should be one of learning and building on each other. So in this world where we see more convergence, so in my mind, and I'm not the expert here, Ali can tell me I'm wrong, but I think in the future, insurance will be embedded into the other industries, and it will be not be an industry itself. So right, so but the curiosity and the learning of reaching out to people, building your own advisory board, your own support network. One of the elements that makes an ecosystem is how the ecosystem is connected locally and globally. And that means founders to founders, that means the availability of real world-class mentors. So there are different players in the ecosystem that have a role in making sure that this is going to happen, right? So, and this will enable as well founders in this ecosystem too, because I sometimes I'm very disappointed because I'm working, say, in Pakistan, we have met a number of founders that have beautiful ideas. The problem is that the access that they have in Pakistan today, even to corporates, the corporates are starting the digitization today. So even the access that they have to prove their idea is awesome and is working is limited, right? So same idea, maybe or similar idea in the US, it scales immediately, no point. So that's one of the challenges in this ecosystem. So we need to build that connectedness, and meanwhile, companies like Microsoft at a broader scale, they work on the digitization of corporates.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a point there, which is, when you talk to banks, specifically on this, right? Again, they are willing to listen to a lot of startups, but the fundamental problem is, assume you have the problem statement correct and you have the product correct. You are not tried and tested in the market, right? So why should a bank take the risk on you? However, if you pivot that approach, and we've seen this work with a lot of companies that we as Microsoft and as business development managers, etc., talking to customers on a daily basis, have managed to take some of these startups and really make them leapfrog some of the incumbent players, is to tell the customer to be their pilot and to use the customer's experience and knowledge as a form of mentorship. Because the reality of the situation is, you're not going to make diamonds and furs kind of money from your first customer anyway. So if you manage to hook a large customer and tell them, okay guys, use my product, use my solution, teach me, pilot with me, and I'll work with you for a nominal cost or for free, this is something that's very appealing to all parties, but it allows you to learn and grow and enhance your product. The other thing that also happens, and we've seen many leading banks do this, is the banks themselves then become embedded as part of your solution, because for them, best case scenario, they get to ideally buy you out if that's the case. And if that's not the case, at least they like to use you as a white labeled solution and then position you to their customer base. So they are now invested in making your solution better, and that brings with it the industry expertise, because you're talking to seasoned bankers. It allows you to capture talent, because there are some very good technology talent in financial services institutions. And on that topic of talent, the point that I couldn't make earlier, guys, it's COVID times. Everything is virtual. I've got 4 customers right now in the UAE that hired anywhere between 30 to 70 people, none of whom are based in the UAE. It's unheard of. It was never done before in the banking environment, right? Specifically in the UAE. If you were being hired in a bank in the UAE, you had to be sitting here. The end. There was no question about it. Now it's common practice. A medium-sized bank in the UAE just hired a team of 16 developers that are all based in the US. A completely different time zone. They're working at night. These guys are working in the day. So my point is that you can use that as a mechanism to help grow your talent portfolio as well, and help you find that CTO who comes with the right knowledge and the right expertise to support you and to grow your business. So just a couple of points from my end.
Guys, that's amazing. Thank you, guys. I've been trying to hammer some of these concepts into the startups' heads and minds for weeks now. They'll kind of tell you that, but Ali and Roberto kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, solving a real problem, guys, right? Everybody's starting their pitches now because of, the last few weeks of conversation and struggle with me. What's the problem you're solving? Why is it a pain point, right? Show me, right? Show me the long lines of customers waiting that extend outside of the bank retail branch, right? That's your first slide. I get it. Yeah, I've stood in that line. Yeah, I know that's a problem, right? Talk to me about that problem, and then talk to me about the market opportunity. So great point from Roberto and Heidi, like focus on solving real problems, guys. Then, mentors, the role of mentors and advisors, so important, right? Not every conversation you have needs to be a funding conversation, right? There's people have so much knowledge, so much expertise that they can share with you, whether it's Microsoft or any other organization, right, to help you on your journey. And then the idea of piloting, right, turning your partner into a pilot and your pilot with a partner kind of thing from Ali. Very, very critical, guys, right? Again, not every conversation you have with a customer is going to be the same. Your first customer is not going to be, what's the expression Ali used? Fur and diamonds. Your first customer is not going to be the diamond and fur, right? Look at it more as an investment in your product, in your success, in market validation and testing. So this is amazing stuff. And then the virtual, right? The virtual world that we're in has changed the way we do business. And that creates so many new opportunities, guys. Even on the tech side, right? You can now hire someone in Estonia, in Russia, in China, or in the US virtually, and they can kind of do the work, and you're not meeting in person anyway. So the game has changed. This is amazing stuff. Ali and Roberto, I mean, just some parting words. I know we have 1 minute left, maybe 30 seconds each. Some parting words, some thoughts on what you've heard from the startups, etc. Go ahead, Ali. I see you're unmuted.
So I mean, look, some really, really insightful ideas, clearly talking to some of the major issues in the region. I heard a lot about cash, which is obviously an issue. One synergistic point that I would also like to add, at least from a perspective, is cash is definitely an issue. But with that said, the other issue is liquidity. So for example, if you guys are doing the solution which allows the management of cash to merchants, you can apply that same solution to allow the management of cash in ATMs. ATMs are seasonal, right? Banks go ahead and they put hundreds of thousands of whatever currency you're in those ATMs. A large portion of that does not get used. Because it does not get used, that's a cost of cash to the bank. If they know seasonality wise, which is a very easy replication to what I heard many of you are doing, that's a problem that they can solve internally, and then you have externally as well. So it gives you the hook to get into work with some of these banks, because cost of cash is not just a merchant issue, it's a bank issue as well. Again, great ideas, very, very excited. My LinkedIn information is available if any of you guys want to connect. More than happy to do so. More than happy to chat to you about how we can help, and also give Roberto some more startups to deal with, as if he doesn't have enough.
Yeah, no, look, amazing ideas, and thank you for sharing. It's always great to, it's always a learning experience to, to listen from you guys what you're up to. I like personally, I like the focus on financial inclusion. For this region, and I manage also Africa, so Middle East and Africa. So I love that we are working already with some startups that are trying to tackle that, and I love the focus on the unbanked as well. But all the solutions you mentioned are relevant. And Ali here is the expert on financial services, so the great comment on the liquidity as well. So for me, I just want to mention a small anecdote to close, which is I heard this interview to a successful founder, and was really inspiring, because they were asking him, how have you been successful? And basically he said 2 words, right decisions. And then they challenged him and say, okay, but how to do the right decision then? And then he said, easier, 1 word, experience. And then he said, okay, but then how do you get experience? And then he said, 2 words, wrong decisions. So this is what it is, right? So it's what you're doing is awesome. So you need to go through that, right? So now all the businesses you are trying to build are based also on data, and you have an opportunity to test, to fail, but fail fast and iterate, right? So that's important. And the component of listening to customers and solving real problems, I guess, is something that is really key to succeed. So looking forward to hear the progress. As for Ali, I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, and happy to, feel free to reach out anytime if any help needed or any, advice or just being in touch. So looking forward.
Thanks so much, Ali. Thanks so much, Roberto, for taking the time to spend today with us. And guys, I expect that every one of you will add both Ali and Roberto on LinkedIn. Obviously, what an opportunity. They offered it to you. Take it while it's there. And I'm sure we'll be in touch in the next few weeks and months.